Unpopular opinion, the others did the watch a favor. Hey everybody, welcome to the first episode of Hidden in the Thrones. My name is Kershel, and we will be going through the Game of Thrones books together. Full disclosure, I have 3 of the books. I believe there are 5. Please do not kill me if you are a fan and you know how many books there are. I just know I have the first 3. We will be going through the books together. I will be presenting or analyzing 2 books every episode, and I will give you my opinions, and we will go through each of them. And I mean, you can feel free to correct me. I will be giving you the link for the voice messaging part of the episode, and you can leave me a voice message and we can go through the messages every episode if you so desire. But for the podcast, for the sake of the podcast, I will be going through my opinions and my impressions of the 2 chapters of the particular podcast. So we'll be going through, in this podcast at least, the prologue and chapter 1, labeled Bran. Now, the chapters in the book, for those of you who may not have read the book but have seen the series, in the book, they don't have chapter numbers as much as they have chapter names. So the chapters are labeled by names, but I will be referring to them as chapter numbers because it's just easier for me to work that way and to count forward so I don't repeat chapters and so on. Right? Sound like a plan? Awesome. Alright, also, if you're hearing noise in the background, guys, my room where I'm recording is near the road where I live. I live in the Caribbean, Trinidad and Tobago, and unfortunately where my house is, there are cars, and cars pass a lot. So if you guys hear cars in the background, forgive me. I will get better equipment soon and you won't have to hear those cars. Alright? But let's get started. So in the prologue, the men of the Watch, which are a group of men who are designated with the responsibility of watching the wall, and the wall is located somewhere at the north of Winterfell. Now, Winterfell, from what I understand, and this is from what I understand, this is not me going through the motions as if somebody hasn't read the book already. I know most of you will be Game of Thrones fans or literature buffs, so I don't need to explain to you what the book is about or what the show is about. But this is just me going through the process in my head so that I understand the book and so I don't come away with too many erroneous notions. So the wall is at the north of Winterfell, and Winterfell is where the Starks reside and where Eddard Stark is the lord of that area. I think that's what I remember. So men are put there on the wall to guard against enemies, I'm guessing, because there are enemies outside of that particular wall. And the men on the wall are confronted with the others. Now, the others are supernatural beings who are cold and blue, and that's all the information I have on them right now. They are cold, they are blue, and they are hella strong and hella dangerous. For now, I'm okay with that. I can work with that. Anyway, so they meet up these guys, and the confrontation between the human beings on the wall, or the men of the watch, and the others goes as well as one would expect when you have one person who doesn't have enough sense to run away versus a thing that is supernatural. everybody ends up, or nearly everybody ends up dead or very undead, as we saw at the end of the prologue. This is an opening I can work with. I'm fine with that opening. That's classic opening. Danger presented first. I can live with that. I'm Gucci. I'm okay with that. But here's my grief. This is my grief, right? Tell me why the others had a better grip on unity than the men who call themselves brothers or are trained to be brothers. Like, the only thing colder than the others was the relationship between the men of the watch. Sir Royce had zero respect from his boys. I mean, zero. The only thing stopping them from them telling him that he was an entitled twat and then pantsing him was the discipline that they was actually instilled in them during their training. But don't get twisted, I feel like they weren't very far off from that at all. There was more truth than jesting or joking when they started teasing him about his mink coat. Some of them were very serious. They really just thought this boy was an uppity little you know what, and they didn't think that he was worthy of being their leader or their lord or having that sir attached to his name. And let's talk about the mink furs and the cloak almost immediately. Let's discuss that. So the men gave him a hard time, and they were saying things like, oh, I bet he killed all the minks himself, and they were prodding at him and poking at him. So I love how the author uses clothing to clearly distinguish the difference between or at least the class difference between the team members. So we have Sir Williem. Williem is his name? Sir Royce. I can't remember his first name. I don't want to say Williem and then it's wrong. So Sir Royce, so the uniform is black, but his particular black included, of course, the mink coat that they were teasing him about, and as well as fine boots and stuff like that. And he was wearing black, but he was obviously very wealthy, and you could tell that he was privileged, and you could tell that he came from a family that could afford. And the other guys, they had, I guess, who would pass for normal clothing or normal black stuff or stuff that was probably worn and older. And so there was this really, from the jump, there was this separation of wealth that, clearly distinguished who was who in the watch. So via clothing, there was this separation, and I love that the author used that particular medium to establish the separation and the disconnect from the team that was there. What I also liked is that he used nature to show the relationship between the men as well. He continually used the phrase, or at least a variation of the phrase of, it was very cold. And yes, Winterfell has snow and everything, but I noticed a couple times that he said, or at least intimated, that it was very cold. And I don't think that he just said it for saying sake. I believe that it was a pointer to the men of the watch. And it wasn't just a setup for, of course, the others either. It was a pointer in conjunction with the clothes, of course. It was a pointer that not everything was right in the relationship between the men of the watch, the men of the watch and Sir Royce. They weren't as brotherly as they needed to be, and given the interactions between them in the prologue, they weren't as unified as they needed to be. In fact, the relationship was very cold, and the coldness was caused by their clear separation, because we had Will, who one of the men of the watch and one of the poorer guys, he was a hunter before he came into the watch, and hunters apparently were very, very poor. And we had some other guys that they described, and you could tell that they were poor. And then we have Sir Royce, who comes from a family of wealth. So clearly there's that distinction there, and the use of nature to distinguish or to solidify the coolness of the relationship between the fellas, and how disjointed they were among each other that's absolutely brilliant. And I loved that he took the opportunity to use those things in conjunction to make the picture a little bit clearer for us. Now, do I think this disharmony caused the death of Sir Royce? And, well, ultimately, I can't remember if it's Will or the other guy. I'll have to double check that. I'll have to go back. I don't have the book in front of me right now because I'm recording in another room. But do I think it caused the deaths? Obviously, 100%. These men did not trust each other. They didn't respect each other. They obviously didn't have each other's backs. As a matter of fact, they begrudged each other. And others or not, their team would not have lasted as long as the Red House fire if they would have been put in a battle. And that's why at the beginning of the show I said the others did these men a favor. They put them out of their misery in as private a space as possible. They would have been expected, if they had gone into battle, I believe they would have gone, if they would have gone into battle, they would have expected, people would have expected them to be victorious and so on. And it may have been a bit of an embarrassment, or more of an embarrassment, if they would have gone into battle and in public and failed. They went and something killed them. Nobody knows at least what killed them. People sort of kind of can anticipate that it's probably the cold that killed them or whatever the case is, but no one knows for sure. So did their eventual begrudging kill them? I think it did. And I mean, the others just really, at this point, the others gave them a mercy kill. The beautiful thing is, the events of the last chapter flow nicely into the event of chapter 1. Because the very first taste of duty that Bran Stark got was having to watch the beheading of either Will or the other guy, because I'm not entirely sure who it is. I feel like both of them would have lost fingers and ears, but I'm leaning more towards it being Will. So after the events of the prologue, where Will was up in the tree and he saw Sir Williem Royce get decimated by the others. And it's a huge truck. That's a really huge truck. Anyway, so after Will saw the death of Sir Royce, and he was confronted with an undead Sir Royce himself, he was pretty much up for execution. And Bran Stark, who is, I believe he's the second to last son of Eddard Stark, who again is Lord of Winterfell, he is brought along at 7 years old to witness his first beheading. Eddard Stark, at a whopping 35 years of age, is the patriarch of the Stark family and the Lord of Winterfell. And he goes back and he asks his 7-year-old son, after the beheading of course, asks his 7-year-old son if he knows why he had to do it. Now, don't get me wrong, I am all for training the next generation and passing on knowledge. Succession planning is everything, child. But baby, it will never make sense to me having children justify murder. It will never be normal to me. I am so sorry about it. Yes, I know it was a different time, but child, no, thank you. But I do appreciate that they did that father and son bonding time. Although I am, what is with all these trucks? My goodness, guys, I'm so sorry. I am so sorry. I am trying, but these trucks are giving me such a hard time. Alright, here's hoping for okay, starting now. Here's hoping for a little more silence. But what I was going to say was that the father and son dynamic is nice, but that is not the most epic part for me. And hopefully I don't take too long building up to this, but this really was just the best part of the chapter for me. So it involves when they find the direwolf. So if you're listening for the first time and you don't know what a direwolf is, or you've never watched Game of Thrones, you've never had an encounter with the book or anything like that, if you don't know what a direwolf is, just imagine if the wolf from Little Red Riding Hood, instead of putting on grandma's skin or whatever the case is, just imagine a wolf putting on another wolf's skin, putting on another wolf's skin, putting on another wolf's skin, putting on another wolf's skin. If you imagine that, a wolf and a wolf and a wolf and a wolf, and if you can imagine that, that's still not the size of a direwolf. A direwolf is a huge wolf. It is a big wolf. It is a horrendously big wolf. And these boys, the Stark boys and Jon Snow, find this dead direwolf with 5 live cubs, that is. And what they decide to do is share the cubs among themselves, meaning take a pup for themselves. Everybody gets a pup for themselves. But Jon Snow, who is Edward's son, but not the same father, different mother, and essentially he's a bastard. He doesn't get a wolf, and he lobbies really nicely for his half brothers, even though it will result in him not getting a pup himself. And he lobbies for the wolves even when Greyhound, one of them, decides wants to kill them, essentially. And he lobbies for them, and he lobbies for the survival of the pups, and because he knows it would make the siblings happy, and he knows it would make Bran happy, because Bran was just about ready to throw a tantrum. And he's fine with it, because he knows this is the path that a bastard has to take. And just as they're about to leave the scene, they hear a whelping, or the little baby a puppy whimpering in the distance. And John turns around and he goes, and a distance away from the mom's body, or the dead mom's body, is a tiny pup, barely alive, but his eyes are open and he's surviving and thriving. Now listen, the symbolism in this scene is so powerful and very nearly orgasmic that I can't even begin to process how beautiful this is. And I feel like if I start to explain the symbolism here, it's going to ruin it. So I'm not even going to try. And to be honest, it's a little bit emotional to the dynamic between how he found the wolf and his status. It's mwah, beautiful, chef's kiss. The other beautiful thing, quite quickly, I'm trying to end as quickly as possible so that this doesn't go off too long. The other pretty thing is that they kind of end up in a life cycle. So they came to kill somebody, to dispense justice, to kill someone. They did kill the person, and then they met within a dead dire wolf or a dead wolf more life. So it went from death to life. And it's not only symbolic of a sort of resurrection, but it's symbolic of the Stark awakening, because the dire wolf is the symbol of the Stark house, and it's symbolic of a Stark awakening, no pun intended at all. The adventure that they're going to be called into is going to be it seems to be a hard one. From what I've been hearing from those who've watched the show, it's going to be a difficult one. And it was crystallized so beautifully in the pup's birth during that. So the pup still had to push forward, even probably after the mom died, to survive. And it's an awesome use of foreshadowing there. So it's a great start to the book. And from the way that the world was raving when the show was on television, I can't wait to see where all of this goes. It really is going to be exciting to see where the author takes us with, after all that beautiful foreshadowing, where he goes from here. And I can tell I'm going to have an absolutely wonderful time. But I don't want to just do this alone, so I am going to include the voice messaging link somewhere in my social media, which I will also link at some point, and we can discuss it together. So leave me your voice messages. Let me know what you think. If you're rereading the book with me, or if you remember the scene from the television show, let me know what you think was the most epic part of one of those two scenes. I'd love to discuss it with you guys. I'd love to hear your opinions on it. And this is where I'm going to end the show for today. And I really hope I get to hear from you. So until next time, you guys stay safe, stay focused. I'm going.